I've done a lot, I've achieved a lot, but I look in the mirror and I can't stand the person who's looking back at me. And in fact, maybe the only power you hold is to withdraw. I'm going to put my foot down and yes. I'm going to be a doctor. There are a lot of people who will probably come on here and be super successful because they're really intelligent, really driven, and I wouldn't say that was my trajectory. No. I went through a number of years of surgical training and working under surgeons and learning the stuff, and after 7 years of that, I woke up one day and decided I don't think I want to do this. The feeling of having epilepsy is this feeling of at any moment you could have things take you feel vulnerable.
Do you ever question who your true self
is? Yeah. That's an interesting thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which me is me, but you don't have to do all the great things. You don't have to have all the shiny objects, right? You got to choose the things that you want. The real truth is, I don't see many people who've got it figured out.
Yeah, no one has it figured out. I believe in all of you listening right now. Come on, you gotta say it too.
I believe in you too. Yeah.
Alrighties, everyone. Welcome. Sorry, this is the first time that I've set up by myself, and so I'm just a little bit paranoid that I haven't done it right, but I think we're good. So, welcome back, everyone, to Seasoned Professional. My name is Hannah Octavia, and today I am here with an incredible individual by the name of Franz. Dr. Franz, I should probably say. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Yeah. Excited to be here.
Fabulous. So the way our podcast kind of goes is we always start with the picture. So I popped it on the wall there for you. It's very precariously put on a pin.
That's all right.
So
I got it.
Perfect. So take a moment. Tell me what's going on in this photo.
So this is a picture of me and my sister, and it's taken in Iran, where we used to live, from when I was 0 point something to about 5.5, and I remember snapshots of our time there, but I think what this picture sort of reminds me of is the journey that my family have been on. Mm-hmm. We lived in a number of places, and I think if someone were to tell me then, or even my parents who are a bit older, if someone would say, look, this is what's going to happen in the next 40 years, it would have blown their minds.
Yeah.
And we've been this little team that's sort of seen ourselves through all of that change. And it's kind of really cute to see my sister holding my hand, because she was sort of my friend and my watcher, and the person who was kind of always there. Mm-hmm. And through all so we moved from Iran to India and then to UK in the space of a year.
Wow.
And we were already at school then, so you can imagine within a year we had changed locations and friends, and networks of people, and then 10 months later we changed again when we came to the UK. So the only constants were my family. And so it's just really meaningful that we got here with just ourselves, and we're still here and we're still a close family, but so much has happened, and this sort of reminds me not to forget where it all started and where we came from. So,
That's wonderful. Can I see it?
Yeah.
Do you know how old you would have been there, do you think?
I reckon around 4, but that is a total guess.
Yeah.
I remember my first day of school when I was there, and the thing I remember was turning up at school, and the only thing I remember is when they separated me from my sister.
Oh gosh.
And I remember just screaming, because I never knew, I'd never felt that. I'd never I no one had ever imposed something like that on me, and it was done with this thing of like, well, this is just what you got to do today.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's amazing what you retain after all those years.
Yeah.
But yeah,
What was the age gap between the two of you?
it's 3 years. So I think she was more aware of what was going on. She kind of like knew people's names and kind of knew where we, before I did. And because we moved around a lot, I just got used to not having a clue what was going on and going along with it like it was the most natural thing, and sort of just faking it and being like, okay, here we are, fine, let's go. And I guess that was really great in a way. I got to the UK, didn't know anyone, and I was like, oh, here we go again, let's make friends, let's do things, let's get involved. And so there was no sense of missing where I'd been or feeling like I was like without anything, even though I'd kind of moved away from my friends. It was just like, okay, new melting pot.
Yeah, let's start again.
Yeah, melt into it. So yeah, it was like a crazy time though. It was when we were in Iran. It was just after a revolution.
Wow.
And there was like a regime in place, and then there was the Iran-Iraq war, and so we'd wake up at night and we'd watch the like windows rattle from bombs falling in the distance and stuff like that.
And you have like vivid memories of this.
I remember that. So there's these little snapshots. I remember that, and we had like a bag packed each. It was like a grab bag. Wow. So if things got too hot, we'd get out. We never did. We left eventually when things did sort of get too dangerous. But it's nuts because we think the world's a crazy place. There are crazy things happening, but there always have been.
Yes, and there always will be.
Yeah. But we lived in the middle of all of that.
Did you feel scared ever?
I don't think so. I mean I think I was a kid that just like normalized and integrated everything that went on around me.
Yeah.
And my parents did a good job of not really showing that they were afraid. So I think you go by what how your parents are, and if you feel something, if they feel something, you as a child you absorb that feeling and feel it too. And yeah, I mean, my mum was like super young, and she'd married my dad when she was 19, I think. And she had like sailed. He was in the Merchant Navy, so she had like sailed around the world with him.
Wow.
Had my sister, kept sailing, and then I came along, and then we moved. Then we lived ashore in Iran while he kept sailing. But yeah, so she was in like not her own country with two little kids. Couldn't speak the language, all of this stuff going on. But if you ask my parents, like that was one of their like favorite times in their life, because they had all of this crazy stuff was going on, but they had amazing, super supportive friends, and they would get together with them, and they'd have parties, and and it's my dad always says, like, in the worst of times you find the best of friends. So that's the feeling that when they talk about Iran, and when I think back, that's the enduring feeling, the like close bonds they made. So,
that's nice that they've been able to kind of have those two contradicting things. It's like the good and the bad existing in one thing. And were you born in Iran?
No.
Where were you born?
Born in Bombay, or Mumbai as it's called now. Yeah.
And where's your mum from?
She's from Mumbai.
Oh, okay.
So she grew up there. That's my mum's mum in that picture there. We'll get onto her later, but with my sister. So she grew up there.
Yeah.
And we, when we moved to the UK, we'd go back to India a lot. My parents had a real intention to keep us rooted in like where we came from. So we'd go back every second or third year.
Nice.
And we would visit where my mum was from and
Yeah.
where my dad was from and where we have other family. So, yeah.
Lovely. And in those first few years of life, was the reason for the constant moving because of your dad's job, because of the
Yeah.
climate? Like, what was the...
Yeah, it was my dad's job. So I guess we would have like maybe settled in Iran because he found a job that was the company who owned the ships where it was part Iranian owned. And so we would have settled there, but then regime change, war, there was a necessity to get out. And so he, with some colleagues who were friends, moved to the UK and set up their own ship owning business, and we followed him out and have been here since. Yeah.
Happily ever after.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, have you ever spoken to your sister about those like early days? And like, did she have any fear? Because you, as you said, you kind of were in your own little world.
I was
really
pretty
paying
clueless.
attention.
Yeah.
But she might have been.
Yeah, I mean, I
Otherwise?
think definitely she was much more aware of what was going on.
Yeah.
I don't think fear necessarily came into it,
Mm-hmm.
because we had like a gang of kids that would look after each other. We'd go to school and the older kids would like
Yeah.
look after us and stuff like that. But I think because it was a kind of like totalitarian, it is, and so there were like strict rules on dress and things like that.
Wow.
And even at that young age, that
Yeah.
was something that she was aware that, you know, she was like, this doesn't feel okay to me.
Yeah.
Because we come from like quite a liberal culture in India. But I don't know, it so much of our like childhoods were together but staggered in a way. So we were at the same place at the same time, but she was sort of going through something that was different to me. And yeah, when we don't really like talk about those early days because I don't have much to contribute.
Yeah.
But I think she would have more memories of it than I do.
Yeah. And when you and your family first moved to the UK, what was your first kind of maybe like
Impression.
memory or impression?
Like it was so clean.
Oh, interesting.
It was like so like tidy.
Yeah.
I remember just like driving down the road, and there's nothing. There's no people living on the road. There are no animals. There's no rubbish. It's like it was so like clean and tidy, and
Wow.
and that was so different to anywhere I've been. And I think now about it, and I think it was clean, but it's also this like hyper sanitized environment. You know, when you like tidy land, you got to clear away like a lot of stuff, and we're realizing that now, like, you know, as we urbanize areas and all the wildlife's gone and all of that stuff. So and then we go on holiday to places that are more you know, more wild to get that experience. But yeah, no, and it was cold when we got here.
Yes.
That was
Where did you move to London initially then?
yeah, we moved to southwest London, where we like kind of were for a significant period of time. And my parents are still there.
Wow.
Yeah.
In the same house?
We lived in a place called Putney in southwest London, and then Kingston, and they're still in the house in Kingston.
Wow.
Until I crowbar them out and get them to move down here. Yeah.
Now they can't leave. You were saying before the podcast you want them to move down to Brighton, but
Yeah.
they can't leave the childhood home.
No. I think that's the thing. It's a double-edged thing, because like somewhere else would offer them another experience, and if they were to move now would be a great time.
Yes.
But it has all those memories and those references, and I think I imagine you get to a certain age and a lot of things are sort of drifting and moving away, and those things are like dearly held on to, So I can kind of understand, they're
Yeah.
like, if we lose this, we lose just a massive connection to like things that are now memories. Like you guys aren't living with us, but I can look at that and say, oh, that's where he
happened.
fell over and hurt his knee, and
Yeah.
that's where she had her birthday, and
Yeah.
so I can kind of understand that.
Yeah. Are you, now that you're a father, are you starting to feel that way about certain areas of your home?
I wouldn't
Or is it too
say
early?
too early.
Too early.
Too early.
That's where if you pooped.
Yeah. And I think we have when we moved down to Brighton, we moved into a house here, and it's like our dream house. We were in a little shoebox in London, and then we moved down here, and it was like, this is amazing. But it's a house that's an old house, and it needs some work, and some work becomes a lot of work. So we have this love-hate thing of, we love it, and we should do a lot with it, and then at the same time, shall we just sell it and go somewhere more convenient? But I don't know, maybe in like 10 years' time, when all of those memories are laid down, I think we'll probably feel more attached to it.
And what were you like in school?
I was a very, do you know the term teacher's pet?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was me.
That was me too. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so I think it came out of just a culture that I was sort of brought up in, which is, be diligent, and be respectful, but also like a feeling of wanting to do well and get a pat on the back.
Yeah.
So I was really driven by that.
By like praise.
Pat on the back. Yeah. And I didn't want to, especially at a young age, I really didn't want to stand out for the wrong reasons. So, yeah, in my early days at school, that was what I was like.
That's what you were like.
Yeah.
I know. I was the teacher's pet too, and I used to have this. Clay, it's in here. It's right over there. I plugged it in for you.
He's reading your mind.
If you're watching this podcast right now, I hope you didn't hear Clay just in the background. My eyes drifting.
Just lumbering around.
Do you need anything else, my love?
No, I just want to make sure
That's charging.
that if need be,
All right.
we have
Fabulous.
another one.
Yeah, the whole teacher's pet thing is so funny. I remember, it was a tease. People would tease you for it. Was that the same with you?
Not really.
No.
I went to this. It was a really cute, little school. It was in a house.
Oh, that's nice.
There were only 12 students per year.
Gotcha.
And so I think I was at that school for maybe 9 years.
Was it Montessori?
No, it
No,
wasn't. Just a
Tiny school.
yeah, and by the end you know everyone so well, and all the and the teachers teach you a lesson, but they also teach it's it was a really lovely experience. But yeah, I think part of it was coming to the country as an immigrant, and coming from an Indian culture. There's an expectation of we're giving you an education, and your part of this is to deliver and turn up, show up, and try hard. And so I think there, from a young age, that's what I kind of wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed it as well. But I didn't have a sense of I didn't at that age feel a sense of rebelliousness, or that it would be cool to not show up and not try.
I see. And that sense of having to do well that you speak about with the Indian culture and stuff, how was that? Was it said to you that you have to do well, or how did you?
No.
How was it delivered?
How do you imbibe it?
Yeah.
I think it's this subtle thing of saying this is who you are, and so my dad would have this phrase of being a captain's son, because he was a captain, and he was, you know, and which means like you've got to rise to the occasion. And I think that again, it's a kind of double-edged thing, because on the one hand, there'd be this sense of like appraising how you're doing, and if you're not doing like the best,
Yes.
there's a sense of like, okay, that's good, but like you could be doing better.
Yeah.
So it built this engine into me that that I could always try harder and do better, which served me to an extent, in that like it built an engine in me that I had like a drive, and I felt whatever I did, like, and however hard it got, like I had another gear in me. Or if I did well, it was like, okay, that's all right, but this is, you know, let's be honest, I didn't really. But I think it also maybe like my interpretation of that appraisal led to the other side of that coin, which was this sense of never believing that I could do well enough to like inhabit that place of yes, that's enough, which like spiraled into its own dysfunction as I got older and further down the road, and stakes got higher and more real. So,
do you still feel that way?
not anymore.
Okay.
Not anymore.
Yeah.
I carried it with me for a long time, and sort of hid it, and was able to like perform my way out of it often.
Yeah.
And also you sort of get yourself lost in a maze, and then you don't know where you are, and you don't have to admit to how you feel, and eventually I kind of hit a wall, and it was this sense of, you know, like, as well as life's going, and life's going pretty good. I've done a lot, I've achieved a lot, but I like look in the mirror and I can't stand the person who's looking back at me, and that was like that was a horrible place to be, and I didn't even know I was there until I started to explore that for myself. And so I think, you know, that's one of the reasons that I wanted to come and talk, because I think my journey is like a long and complicated and convoluted one, that eventually got to a place of me saying, you know, I appreciate myself, and I know what my value is, and now that I know what it is, I can deploy it, and I can help other people, and it feels great, and there's no downside. And so I know that you can go from one to the other, and I kind of want to let other people know.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
So if you are feeling not enjoying yourself at the moment, then perhaps you can listen to this podcast. But quickly, before we continue on with your schooling and such, in terms of like was your dad around a lot with his job when you were a kid, or not really?
My dad traveled a lot.
Okay.
With his job, so he needed to be away. He'd often go off to various countries for negotiations and things like that. So he would probably be away like 50% of the time. Yeah. And that might be for like 1 week, or it might be for a month. And so that was, I think, because he had always traveled, and you know, ever since the like Iran days, he'd always be away and then back. It was, again, something that was like totally normalized for us. But looking back, it was, you know, it sort of was really difficult, I think, for my parents, because my dad didn't want to leave his wife and kids. And then there would be the adjustment when he went, and then there'd be the adjustment when he came back, because my mum would have like a system, and my dad would turn up and it'd be like, right, this is what we're doing. So yeah, that was
fun.
That was fun. I mean, I knew no different. That was just how it worked. and there was a sense of like, I didn't compare myself to anyone else because I already had a sense of like, I'm different to you guys. I'm like from a different place, from a different culture. We kind of do things our way. This is our family.
Yeah.
And so there wasn't, certainly back then, there wasn't really a sense of like, it could be another way. It was like, this is who we are.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's interesting to hear you say, because I think a lot of people do have the tendency to compare to other situations.
Yeah.
And even though, as you say, you were kind of out of it as a young kid and just kind of in a little, maybe a dream state perhaps, in your own little world, perhaps that helped you in some way to kind of stay within your family and stay present within that.
Yeah, I think that, you know, me being in a dream state would be a little bit how my family would describe me. I think I was the younger sibling.
Yeah.
And so I was never involved in like executive decisions.
Oh, no.
I was just sort of along for the ride. Yeah. And I think there was a sense you sort of just zone out, because you know that you never needed to put your hand on the steering wheel. So you're just, yeah. And I think, you know, like any family or any childhood, there are like challenging moments, but I'd never really have to deal with them. I could just, yeah.
It's funny because my brother and I have the same age gap, so I'm the older sister and he's younger. And honestly, until about the age of when he turned 9, it like shocked me that he knew how to read, because he was just like so, I don't know why it was so shocking to me that he knew how to read, because obviously, but it was just like he was kind of in his own world again. It was like he was there, but
yeah,
I don't know, it was strange.
I think it's not that you don't care. I think it's a coping strategy for like powerlessness.
That
so
probably, he probably relates to that.
Yeah,
very much so.
you don't hold any power. So, and in fact, maybe the only power you hold is to like withdraw.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Huh. That really hits my brother right on the head there. You should explore that. Yeah. Anyways, you can just pop your picture up on the wall if you'd like. We'll put it back if you can get it. I just kind of balanced it on the edge there.
It's probably gonna. There we go.
Oh.
Well, it can be a little bit jaunty.
Yeah.
That's
beautiful.
fine.
Did you, when you were in like high school and, you know, finishing up, did you have any idea what you wanted to be when you were older?
Well, when I was in high school, as in like when I was about 15. Okay. There came a time where you have to start thinking about what you're going to do. And you know, it was an era of unimaginative sort of
professions.
Yeah. So I think it was doctor or lawyer for me. I say that now, but I think the way things have worked out, I think there's a real reason that I chose to do what I do now. I just don't think I was like aware of them, and I'm more aware of them now, and I can trace that like all the way back to probably like early childhood. But at the time it was like, I'll do this one. Yeah. I remember the moment that I decided that I was going to pursue medicine. I was like 16 and a half or something. I was off on an expedition with a group of guys, and we were walking this, I think it's like the Pan American Trail. We were walking down this muddy sort of road in the middle of nowhere. Yeah. And we were just walking for a really, really long time. And I had nothing else to think about, nothing else to distract me, and I knew I had to make this decision. And I kept walking, and eventually it came to me, and I was like, yeah, this is it. And I think there's something really powerful in taking yourself away from distractions and focusing on something, and not in a sort of forceful way, but opening up a space and then allowing yourself to gravitate towards something that you probably feel and know inside, but you're not aware of consciously. And it's a practice I now do with the dogs.
Yeah.
I go out and I walk, and things come to me, and ideas, and yeah.
Well, they say, it's good to be bored in that sense, because that's when all the creativity kind of shoots forward into the head. So you had this kind of moment where you said you were going to get into medicine. Did it, from that point, like, was it a seamless path to getting into medicine? Like, did you have the grades? Did you have the experience?
Yeah.
Was it as simple as all that?
Yeah, getting into medical school, which was, I mean, like, now it's super crazy tough. Back then, it was still difficult. I went to, like, a really good academic school where people were expected to do well. And even there, a group of us who wanted to do medicine were being sort of advised that it might not be a wise choice because it's a really difficult thing to do.
What school?
Where was I at school? In Wimbledon. It was it was a really super happy time in my life. And getting into medical school, it was seamless. Like I was at a really great school. The education was great. It was a time in my life where I really enjoyed, like, all the activities that they afforded us, which, like, massively rounded out my CV at that young age.
Yeah, 100%.
And so by the time I was applying, it was pretty straightforward. Yeah, I mean, and I had the support of like other people in my life. My uncle is a doctor in the States, and I went over to the States the summer before I applied to medical school, and, like, spent some time in an amazing hospital up there. So yeah, it was I was, I'd say, like, privilege is probably a good word to use.
And Wimbledon, remind me, is that that's in London?
That's in London. It's in southwest London. Yeah, it's where they have the tennis.
The tennis.
Yeah.
What's that one school that we walked through that was, like, in the middle of that church? It's not that one, right?
No.
Okay.
No, Wimbledon's like 40 minutes outside.
Okay. I don't know where anything is in London.
That's okay. Yeah.
All sounds the same. But yes, so the whole doctor thing. Did your parents have anything to do with this?
No. In fact, when I said that I wanted to be a doctor, like, my dad sat me down and tried to. A lot of people say, like you're Indian, your parents obviously pushed you into it. Like, no, my dad sat me down and he was like, he tried to convince me. He was like, son, I know that you want to do a good thing, but, like, it's like a really long road. It's a really hard road. And are you sure that you want to do this? And I don't know, maybe a little part of me, like, the more he tried to convince me not to.
Maybe that was his tactic.
That
was his tactic.
I'm going to put my foot down and I'm going to be a doctor.
I'm going to be a doctor.
I'll show you. Yeah. So, but they were super. I think my mum, I think when she was a kid, had, like, maybe thought about being a doctor, and she had, like, was at the time, I think she was studying, like, a science degree or something, or going to, and then she married my dad. So there was a feeling of, like, what if I hadn't have got married so young, like, what might I have done? And so she was really happy that I was choosing that. Yeah.
Did your dad have some other profession in mind for you? Or what were you very much allowed to choose?
Yeah, not necessarily. I think just my dad had he was a pretty worldly man. Like, he understood the ways of the world, and we'd moved to the country, and he sort of would commute in and work in the city, and he understood, like, the financial world and, like, how cutthroat it is, and I think he was pretty wise, because it wasn't a straightforward road. And there were probably professions which would have landed me in a much more like secure place.
Interesting.
A much more like financially secure place for
Really?
a long period of time. Yeah. And also, you know, it's a profession that is vulnerable to like the whims of politics and the economy and things like that in this country, because it depends on good decisions and good leadership and good funding, and sometimes it doesn't get all of those. So yeah, it's
Cutthroat?
it's definitely not cutthroat. It's a really supportive profession, but it's a tough one for a lot of people. Yeah.
So you get into medical school.
Yeah.
Where did you go?
I went to University College London, which was really lovely university in the centre of London.
And how does it work here, the whole medical?
So it's different.
Situation?
In the States, you do an undergrad degree and then you do medical school. Here, you go straight into medical school, which is like 5 years or 6 years if you do. You can kind of, it's called intercalating. You can add on in the middle of your degree. You add on another sort of degree. So I did psychology in the middle of my medical degree.
I see.
So mine was a 6-year course. But yeah, I mean, I'd say like in terms of like the beginning of my journey, like there are a lot of people who will probably come on here and be like super successful because they're like really intelligent, really driven, talented, correct, you know, something, and they just fly. And like, I wouldn't say that was my trajectory. No. I don't think I was like the best student at medical school. It went from being a really structured environment at school to like really open environment in university, and for some reason I just didn't feel stimulated in the right sort of way. Yeah. So I kind of just floated my way through medical school.
The man comes on here, said he floated through medical school.
Yeah, did enough.
And
I say that with all honesty because I understand what drives me, right?
So what drives you?
So I care about people. So the moment I finished medical school and started working, and I was in front of real people, like
that's when
all the lights like came on.
Yeah.
And then it was this journey to like learn, grow. There's a lot of growing that had to happen, and yeah, it was great. But again, so I finished medical school, and at the beginning of my journey, I was like, right, I'm going to be a surgeon. So that was what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I went through like a number of years of surgical training and working under surgeons and learning the stuff, and after like 7 years of that, I woke up one day and decided I don't think I want to do this, which was a really difficult moment, but it was honest. I don't really want to be in this environment anymore. I don't know what's missing. But I know I need to go and find it. And then I fell into working in the emergency department at a hospital I used to work at. And again, it was this moment of like, wow, this is amazing. And it's the job that like a lot of people duck because it's stressful, but I loved it. I love the people. I love the patients. I love the team. I love the stress. I love the chaos. And so there was a learning process of what drives me, and maybe this feeling of it's not the same thing for everyone. You know, we have these scales of like good and bad and or better and worse, you know, comparisons, but we're such unique organisms. and we're driven by, you know, very individual experiences, and we're also, I think, like slightly different types of people. So at the time, I just really liked the unpredictability of my day. I like the diversity of experience. I'm someone who really loves novelty, and so it was like ticking every box. And at the time, I loved high stress situations.
Crazy situation.
Because that drove me.
Yeah.
So I was in front of people, patients who I cared about, and I was there at times that were like critical. Whether that's because they were critically unwell or they were critically worried about their health. I had a job to do, and it was immediate. And so I loved doing it, and I loved the feel of it, the reward I got from it. And I did that for another 7 years. So by now we're about 16 or 17 years into a career.
Oh my gosh.
And I met my now wife, and we decided that we were going to move down to Brighton. After a few holidays around the world, we thought, let's go down to the seaside and have that sort of life. And overnight I decided I'm going to apply to a training scheme to retrain and become a GP, because that's the kind of thing I do. And I did, and it worked out. I applied to just this scheme, and the following year we moved down here, and I started retraining, and it felt like going back to school. I was with all these kids, but it was amazing because I was a decade and a half or more into a professional career, and I was learning new stuff. And that was amazing.
You wonder how that's possible.
And just the feeling of I'm at the bottom of a learning curve, and if I stick with it, I'm going to learn so much in this period of time. This is the bit that I'm going to take off. And so it was a hard grind for 3 years, because I went from being, I had felt like I'd earned my right to feel competent at what I did. After leaving one career behind and starting a new one, I had to work really hard to pick up all the pieces that I didn't know. And so I felt competent, and I felt useful, and I felt like I belonged. And then I had to leave that behind when I came here and started something new. But I stuck with it, and it was like it birthed a new me. And I'm really thankful for that. So over the next 3 years I committed myself to learning new, so like exploring new bits of territory that I didn't know about, and sort of trying to complete the circle, and understand as much as I could, so I could be as useful as I could. And when that was done, I finally gave myself license to feel like, you know what, I think you've done enough to feel like proud of yourself. So that was a nice moment.
Lovely. Well, that is a lot. I have a lot of questions. So we're going to go back, actually, to 6 years of medical school. I have questions starting all the way back there. So the first thing, for the 6 years of medical school, you said that you kind of almost like drifted through it. You kind of weren't really there. Did you have any doubts in those 6 years that it wasn't the right thing for you? And how did you deal with them?
I think during medical school, I ignored them. Because I had there was a clear goal.
Okay.
And it was like, get to the end. And do that successfully. So I think like we can go like a long way if there's like a clear set goal, like a long way in the wrong direction. You know, if we or someone else impose, you know, this is something that I need to achieve, and it's out of reach. Like you can go for years killing yourself and feeling terrible just because you haven't crossed that line. But yeah, so I think I was happy when I finished, and I was looking forward to work. But during it, I think I just hadn't, like, I hadn't discovered myself.
Okay.
Right. So
Yeah.
I kind of just felt a little bit out of place, felt a little bit insecure,
Yeah.
didn't really feel confident.
Okay.
And so it's really difficult to apply yourself when you feel those things. And like everyone does, right? You know, when you're at the start of something, you're not going to be good at it.
No.
And it's going to feel awkward, and it's going to feel, you're going to have a voice in your head that says, this might not be for you. Like, there's probably something that suits you better, right? And like, I've always had to contend with that voice. I think we all have to contend with that voice. And most of my work now, like with myself and with patients, is to teach them not to listen to that voice.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because the whole like confidence thing when you're going through university, it's such a shared reality, because like you said, you come from a very structured environment where if you don't get things done in high school, like, you're being chased for it. You are kind of still under the watchful eye of an educator or a guardian or whoever it may be, and then you're let free essentially into this place of so much learning and so many people, and it's like a shared experience of not having that confidence to know if this is the right place for you.
Yeah. I'll take us back even further.
Sure.
To give us something else. So I think something that plays into like childhood times, and then like secondary school times, and then definitely university times, and then later life was, so when I was 6 or 7, we were in India, and like something happened, and I didn't really know what had happened, and I was like, I didn't know for days what had happened. I was like just going to like hospitals, and like I was having like CT scans and like MRI scans and stuff like that. Yeah, but you know, I was the kid who just would go anywhere.
Yeah.
And so I kind of, one day I was like, what is going on?
Yeah, like, why are we here again?
And people didn't realize that I didn't really understand what was going on. And so while we were on holiday, I'd had like a massive seizure while we were staying with friends. And but of course, like, I woke up the next day and I didn't know it had happened, and so I just we just carried on with the day, and everyone was like super worried and shell shocked, and I guess didn't want to worry me, but yeah, so that happened. And then over the next year I had a number of other ones, and I was diagnosed with epilepsy, and I went through like a range of medications, and then eventually was put on one, and then I stayed on that medication until I was about 13. And I didn't have any seizures for a number of years, and then came off that medication. And as I came off it and started secondary school, because of the nature of it, and I'll talk about it in a bit, I had loads of panic attacks, which I'd never had before.
Wow.
It just overnight, I just started to have them, and they would like, they felt horrible, and I'd have to like go and lie down, and you know, all the things that you get when you but the plus side to not being on the medication is, and this is something at the time it didn't clock, is that it's quite sedating. It kind of dumbs you down, you put on weight, it kind of slows you down. So during that early childhood, when people, like a lot of my teachers would say, like, he seems really like relaxed.
You were.
I was, yeah. And so when I went to my secondary school, what happened was I kind of woke up overnight.
Okay, interesting.
And I went from being that like super passive, a bit, to being like I found my voice and I was more assertive,
Yeah.
and my brain started working properly, and I went from someone who was trying really hard but struggling to get like really good grades to like being a straight A student
Wow.
kind of overnight.
Yeah.
And so I became like sporty, and I think that part of the feeling of having epilepsy is this feeling of like at any moment you could have things like you feel vulnerable, and there was a sense of wanting to like combat that feeling by telling myself that I was like robust.
Mm-hmm.
And so I sort of got into physical sports and really built up this feeling of like, no, you're okay, you
Mm-hmm.
can. And then when I went to university, because I'd been on medication, the rule was like you don't drink ever. So
Yeah.
I went to medical school,
Yeah.
and I didn't touch a drop of alcohol
Wow.
for like the first 3 or 4 years. And I think that was a real key thing, because what happened was I guess medical school is a difficult, stressful time. But people have friends and communities, and they sort of carry you through.
Yeah.
And I was sort of on the outside of everything. So I had friends, and they're still friends to this day, but I wasn't like part of a gang, and so I just sort of I wandered in and out of things and kept myself to myself, and
Yeah.
turned up to lectures and turned up to, but there wasn't this momentum that carried me through that, and that gave me a sense of belonging, and and when you belong, you have a sense of confidence.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's one of the things that sort of like played into how that works.
Yeah.
And then ironically, when I was about 25, my first day as a doctor,
Yeah.
I had like my 4th seizure as an adult. So
Wow.
I'd had a few very widely spaced apart,
Yeah.
and they decided to put me back on medication. So I've been on like medication for the last 25 years.
Wow.
But in the last 3 years, so in the
Yeah.
last I came off the medication that I'd been on before and went on to another one.
Yeah.
And so once again, I had this moment of like just
Rebirth.
switching on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And once again, I had like, because the medication that I'm on is quite alerting, and the one that I was on is the opposite off. It's used as a mood stabilizer, so you're emotionally regulated.
Yeah.
It's also like it has cognitive effects, so I'd fall asleep everywhere. I'd always be like a step behind every conversation.
Yeah.
And overnight I was like, my mind was like 1,000 miles an hour, and I had like the worst. I've been the most chilled out person for my whole life. I had terrible anxiety. I had insomnia.
Yeah.
I'd wake up at 4 a.m. and start writing notes in a notebook. I thought I was going crazy,
Jeez.
and so that drove me to like find some help. I found a therapist. I worked out what I needed to do myself to manage like myself, my emotions, and so that's kind of what has driven me to develop a relationship with myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm super grateful, because like
Yeah.
out of that has emerged a me that I'm so much more comfortable with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's lovely. I have a question about the whole medicine thing, 'cause I'm on medication as well. I don't know. Oh my! I don't know what's happening there. For obsessive compulsive disorder.
Yeah.
And I've been on it for like probably like 7 years or so.
Yeah.
But my question to you is, you said you would kind of have like these periods of, you were almost like in a sedative state, and then you'd kind of be more alert. Do you ever like question who your true self
Yeah.
is?
That's an interesting thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which me is me.
Yeah, which
Right.
one actually is legitimately me?
Yeah. And like there were times that in the last couple of years where like I was very uncomfortable, and I thought, can I just switch back to
who that what the other
me.
one was? Yeah.
But I'd say like the theme of my message is like you're sitting here right now.
Yes.
This predicament, like
Yeah.
that's you.
Yeah.
Yes, like anything affects it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the people around you, the like wider environment, whether the sun's shining, whether you take a medication, the food you eat, how much caffeine you drink, all of these things.
Mm-hmm.
But you add that all together, and you've got to like, you is the like manifestation of all of that.
That's
You've
a
got to
really good
carry
point,
that.
actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, yes, we can say medication makes you act a certain way potentially, but then there's all these other factors
Yeah.
that you can't like remove yourself from it. You can't put yourself in a vacuum to be this is who you are.
Yeah, and
There's just too many things.
I've asked myself the question,
Yeah.
and it's too difficult to
I
answer,
know.
right?
It's such a
Because I've been
path.
I've been on or off or on medication pretty much my whole life now.
Yeah.
So there isn't, I don't know the separate me that
Yeah.
exists outside of these influences.
Yeah.
I know the me that I got used to, and it had it's this catch-22, like it had great benefits.
Mhm.
You know, I could be in the middle of the most stressful situation, and I'd just be calm, and I could be around people who were really provoking,
Yeah.
and I'd just be this super calm influence, you know.
Yeah.
And that was a currency that I had.
Yeah.
But now that I'm like more awake
Mm-hmm.
and more like mentally agile, it's like, will I give that up for a little
Yeah.
bit of peace?
Would you?
Who knows?
Yeah, who knows?
Who knows? I mean, I currently see it. Do you know Ramdas? Do you know of? He's a guy that is passed away now, but
Mhm.
he was a Harvard lecturer, I think, pioneer in like psychedelic research, and then went
Okay.
off and became this spiritual person. But he talks about like what you go through in life, and he
Yeah.
uses this term of like it's your curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
Like, don't run away from it. Your life is like it's teaching you, right?
Yeah.
So whatever you're going through, that's the lesson that you've got to learn. And who knows? But like, I think the experience of life is just how you choose it. Right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
my experience of like the side effects that were difficult on my
Mhm.
medication drove me to do a lot of work, and
Interesting.
drove me to cope
Yeah.
with that,
Yeah.
and that's taken me to like a really great place.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll shoulder the burden of it,
Yeah.
to like not just to like get to a really convenient, comfortable place, but I'll shoulder the burden because I'm learning every day. So
yeah.
yeah.
And you're learning how to be at peace with it. Almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also it's like it's brought me a new currency. So a big part of my job is to sit with people who are like having a really difficult time in life,
Mm-hmm.
who have like really terrible anxiety or depression, or struggling like with themselves
Mhm.
and with the life that they're in.
Mm-hmm.
And I can sit there genuinely and say like, and be comfortable with that.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I need to shut them down to feel okay.
Yeah.
So I can go with them on that journey, and I can even say like, I know what it feels like,
Yeah.
you know, and it's terrible, and there's like, and we'll work together, but we don't need to change that. We can
Yeah.
like sit in it.
Yeah.
And so it's given me this wonderful gift of being able to like hold out compassion for people and sit with them in their like dark moment. And being a doctor, your urge is to fix it, right?
Yeah.
And I do try and fix it, but to be able to pause and sit there and say, yeah, this is just shit,
Yeah, like acknowledge the difficult time.
I would never have been able to do that, and it's given me the ability to do my job so much more effectively, to develop like quite profound relationships with people. Yeah. And I wouldn't have had that, so I'll take it.
You'll take it. Going quickly back to the surgery situation.
Yeah.
I want to hear all about this. Why was that the thought for you to begin with? Why did you want to go into surgery?
Because I wanted
to be rich.
Oh no! It's not. It wasn't the wealth, but it was the validation.
I was gonna say because you come with a certain prestige if you're a surgeon.
Yeah, totally. And also like I've got friends who are surgeons, and like they're a great bunch of people. Yeah. Like the hidden secret is like it's great, it's fun. Yeah. You get your own team. You're ring fenced like reality. Yeah. The world and its mess stays outside of the theatre. In there, you've got your A team, and you know what you're doing, and you put your music on, and you go to work, and it's fun and it's enjoyable. Yeah. And when you leave, you tell everyone, this is terrible and stressful, but like you can't wait to get back in there.
It's like a high.
Yeah. So I loved the time that I was the time I spent like training to do surgery. Yeah. But it dawned on me, like, I'm not that guy.
What do you mean?
I have
you're not
like
that guy?
I have super respect for surgeons, but like it's such hard work, and it requires when I say hard work, it requires like commitment and dedication, just consistent, total like commitment to this thing. Yeah. And it takes over your life, and you can't resent it, and you've got to just like follow this path. And I'm not that guy.
You're not that guy. That's a good point. You need to, because from what you're saying, it seems like your interests are quite vast, whereas if you're a surgeon, do you think you have to be like completely narrowed in on that one thing?
You just have to, it requires so much of your time and attention. You have to make loads of sacrifices. Yeah. And I think, like, I'm going to adjust my leg because I'm old and arthritic and
arthritic.
I will get onto that.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So what was I saying? The surgery.
Yeah, surgery stuff.
So it requires this level of commitment, and I think like I grew up like my dad traveling a lot, and he made a load of sacrifices, for us, but I saw that, and I kind of felt like I don't think I want to. I didn't have a good relationship with that level of like authority and authority demanding sacrifice. Yeah. And so it just wasn't going to be me. And you're right. I have loads of interests. I've always been like a super active person, and I'd be like, I want to get out and go boxing and go and do this and that, and like I like writing, and I like people, and so there's there is this thing of like, but it's a great thing, why don't you do it? But you don't have to do all the great things. You don't have to have all the shiny objects, right? You got to choose the things that you want. And that's the most difficult question. What do you want? And once you figure that out, then you commit to it.
100%. With the so you spent 7 years. Was this training to become a surgeon, or were you a surgeon by the end?
No, it was all training stuff.
So that's intense. So how long does it actually take?
It takes about that long, but at the time there weren't many like progressive jobs, so you'd like circle around doing the sort of junior jobs. So,
I see. Yeah. Do you remember how much you were paid?
Oh, not enough to get by.
No, really?
Yeah, I mean, it was probably a time in my life where I was, less frugal.
Ah.
I was a young single guy who like would
Wanted
introduce
to-
themselves as a surgeon. Like I,
Oh, yeah. Come on.
it's on me. So like yeah, like being a doctor in the UK, you earn some money. I'm not going to say it's but it for a long time for a lot of people, it's pretty uncomfortable because the training is so long that you will start relationships, start families, and we'll have to be trying to support them, and it's a real struggle. We know couples where both partners are doctors and they live in London and they've got kids, and it's like super difficult, and you didn't get into it with that expectation.
Yeah, you don't see the bad necessarily. It's the focus is more on the good, I suppose. But with walking away from surgery, what, like, you realized that like this wasn't for you at some point, but how? And you say that you introduced yourself at the time as a surgeon.
Yeah.
How were you able to
It
let
was a
go
running
of
joke.
that? Like, do you think
Yeah.
there was like a bit of a
difficult? Yeah.
Yeah, inner turmoil.
Because I didn't know what I was, and in fact, that was a period. That was a long period of wanting to project something because I didn't really feel comfortable with. I wanted to achieve enough to feel something.
I see.
So
you were still working towards that.
Oh yeah. I was a million miles away. So
yeah.
I was like, I need to prove I need to prove to you that I'm gonna say this or do this.
Yeah.
So it was difficult because it peeled a layer of the onion away. So then you're like, well, what am I if I'm not this?
Yeah.
And now I'm like, that's like life's work is to keep peeling the layers away and saying like, what if I take this away? What if I don't, like, if I'm driven to, I don't know, be kind and do things for people, what's driving that? What if I just stop that for a moment and I don't have that to say I did that? Like, how do I then, am I okay with myself? And if I'm not, why am I not okay with myself? So I think like those are really useful questions.
Write them down
Yeah.
and ask them to yourself.
Yeah.
So you left surgery and then you became an ER doctor.
Yeah.
Is this more training?
Yeah.
So
So
you
I had
have
to-
just done a lot of school.
Yeah. And so this is it. Like I would turn up and I would work hard and I would enjoy whatever I did. I'm quite an easy person like that. You put me somewhere and I'll just apply myself and I'll be like, oh, this is great, let's have fun. And but because I shifted around a lot and didn't sort of finish anything for a while, like I carried a lot of shame. I'm because I wasn't comfortable. I couldn't put something up on a board and say, look, that's who I am.
Yeah.
And the further I went, the more it felt this way, because like there were all these people around me, like that's him and that's her and that's them, and I think my parents were like, "What's he doing?" Like, what, and what I was doing was like not compromising on that final thing of like, okay, this is me and this is where I'm comfortable. But it was a difficult time.
Yeah.
I didn't know where I was headed. So I could work hard day to day, but I didn't know how it was going to end up. And yeah, it's like when you're in that place, it's pretty shit. Yeah.
Did you, when you were like looking around to other people that in your eyes, you were like, yeah, they've got it, they know who they are. Was it always a career that made them know who they were? Like, were you trying to find satisfaction in a career to say, this is who I am?
Yeah. Yes.
Or how were you trying to find yourself?
I'd say when I looked around.
Yeah.
Truth is, and when I look around now, like the real truth is, like, not like I don't see many people who've got it figured out.
Yeah, no one has it figured out.
And I see people who get to the end point and then they like panic because they're like, wow, I don't even know why I'm here.
Yeah, because perhaps they had this idea that once they were that
Yeah,
thing, that
yeah.
would be who they were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also it's that, like, that's the, like, the onion peels, like, that it's all gone because
Yeah.
you've achieved it, done.
Now
Move to
what?
the side. Now what? Who are you?
Yeah.
Like, because if you're not happy now, when you've got everything,
Yeah.
that, like, you miscalculated a long time ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think I didn't think too hard about it. I kind of felt like one day I'll get there, but there is this sense of like, I felt a bit lost, and I felt the edges of, like, losing, like, despair, losing hope. How am I going to get myself to that place? I feel so far away from it. But
had you ever felt that place before?
yeah, like for like on and off for years,
Yeah.
right? And you have glimmers of hope, and you think, you know, you get like a little, someone hands you a little something, and you think, this is it, this is gonna, like,
Enlightened.
pull me out
Yeah.
of this place.
Yeah.
But it never does, and then that glimmer sort of fades, and you're back where you are. But I think that what I was doing, so I call it, like, wandering in the wilderness, right? So I was at school for a really long time, learning loads of stuff. Didn't quite know how I was going to apply it. Was uncomfortable because I didn't know. I didn't have a place to be, and I didn't have a finish line to point myself towards. But I was, like, covering a lot of territory. I was mapping out so much in my head. And I think, like, I've got friends who had much more linear career pathways. One of my best friend's a surgeon. He was doing the same thing. And for a long time, he was really uncomfortable. And he was following, but it was still, I think there's a much longer lag period where you're like, I don't know how this is going to work out. I have no guarantees. I'm just grinding.
Yeah.
And then in a short space of time, you sort of, like, go through this prism, and, like, a new light comes out the other end, and it turns around. And so now when I look back, I'm like, that's what I was doing. I was doing what I was always meant to do. I was going and working the hard yards, and, like, looking under rocks and dark places, and okay, that's there. And now I can apply it. And it feels great.
What's your curriculum?
I was, yeah.
You had to, some people, like, try one thing and they're like, it works, but you had to, like, try all the things that didn't work first to find.
Yeah, but even
thing.
then, it wasn't just trying something that was useless. It was learning from something.
Yes.
And now it's left me with this thing of, like, okay, I'm still not cooked.
Yeah.
But I'm comfortable.
Yeah.
Like, I've done enough and I've seen enough that I can say I've got loads to learn, but, like, I can utilize what I've got so far. So what I want to do, my aim is that I want to always frame it that I'm at the bottom of a very steep learning curve.
Yeah.
That, like, this year it's going to be, like, really different.
Yeah.
And I think for someone like me that works well. I feel like there's always another horizon to move towards.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I think that's a really beautiful way to look at life. It's like each year, you could put it in years, would be like a new thing that you're working towards. And that way, like, there's never an end. You're always growing as the person that you're eventually going to be. I'm wondering if you had put that, like, idea of every year as a learning curve, that idea and that, like, concept when you were younger, do you think it would have stuck?
I think that I needed to go through
Everything else.
what I went through to learn. I think some things you can't teach people, but what you can do is say, like,
it'll be okay.
It'll be okay.
Yeah.
Like,
it'll work out.
and frame it like, if you're feeling lost, you're probably in the right place, because you're covering ground that you didn't know was there, right? And you're learning things about yourself, you're learning things about your capacity, you're learning about your like resilience, and if it feels like there's a lack, like you're feeling that, so you know where you can either be kinder to yourself or ask more of yourself next time around. So I think that experience now frames how I go about my week. So it's not that I'm not saying I've gotten to this place where like I sail through life.
No.
Like I go to work and I have days that are like super stressful. I have like moments with people where I feel like, wow, that went terribly. This feels awful. But now I can, not in the moment, like in the moment I walk away from that and I'm like, this is hard. But later on I look back and I'm like, okay, that happened, and this is part of, you know, I'm in the curriculum, I'm learning, you know, and it will go in there, and it will add to my like tools next time around. Maybe it will go a little bit better, maybe it won't, but yeah. So it's kind of framing the challenge of walking through life and like a career, and yeah, like feeling like it's overwhelming at times, feeling like you don't have it within you to do it, or to do it well, or to do it easily. Like I'd say that's just like, that's how it should feel. Maybe like forever, if you're doing it right. Because if you're really good at something, you want to be trying to get better. Right? So if the moment you sit back and you're like, yeah, I know it all, I'm good enough,
then it's
then the moment someone like for me, if someone walks through the door and they make me, you know, the challenge of them makes me feel bad, I'm going to blame them. I'm going to say, it's you.
It's not me.
You're just a terrible person. You're just rude, and you don't respect my expertise.
Authority.
all of that, right? That's the reaction. Because they're upsetting the need for you to feel in control and content.
That's such an interesting concept. It's like, if you say that you're happy in the place that you are, then that's so true. You blame things on everyone else rather than looking inward and realizing that the only thing you can actually control is yourself. And that requires if that. I know. Oh gosh, that's a lot. I feel like my brain has been like massaged, and I'm like, I don't know what to say. Is the next path you're going down a therapy route? Like, are you going to become a therapist? No. Is that the next thing that's happening?
No. But yeah, lots. So I'm at this point where turning up and being a certain way around certain people has opened up lots of opportunities to like collaborate with people. And yeah, I guess I have this like wonderful perspective of being able to like look behind the curtain at people's lives and people's struggles and their suffering, and you do it, like I do it so often across different areas, that you develop this like cross-sectional like concept of like what's going on across society. Not across all of society, but across the bit of it that is struggling and asking for help. And so that drives me to want to work in that space. Outside of, maybe alongside the work I do as a doctor, but maybe like slightly outside that, using like my life experiences and
Lovely. And if you could give some advice to someone, I think you've been full of advice, to be quite frank. I'm not sure if we need any if there's any more you can give to us. But I suppose if someone does come into your office and say, like, I'm feeling really down right now, and, like, I don't know which way my life is going, and I feel lost, help, what do you do in that situation? You sit with them, but, like, what are the next things you would tell them?
I probably wouldn't tell them things. I'd probably, like, try and listen. I'm a talker. I'll interrupt people and talk over them. But I would I'd nudge them towards the story that they want to tell me. Right.
I see.
Like, people just need an opportunity, and they need to feel safe. And sometimes, like, like, maybe I'm a bit of a bullish, like,
I don't find
person, but so sometimes they need you to, like,
I bet I know what you mean. They need, like, someone to be like,
you're
like, gonna be okay.
People put up barriers, and then they stand on the other side of the barrier, and they know that barrier is like, it's like a paper wall, and they're like, oh, you can't help me because I'm on the other side of this barrier. So sometimes you need to just
scissors.
like just this.
This doesn't.
And so I think asking people questions a bit, like, how did it start, and we're like, what do you think, and it's like everyone who's in that position is containing something that they think is too much or too ugly or too honest to hear themselves, but for anyone else to hear. And so I think if you can, like, create a space where you're like, anything goes, it's fine, then people often are pretty ready to open that door, and then you just follow them. Like, it's like a tether, right? And so you feel it. You're not quite sure where it leads, but you just follow it, and tether becomes like a lifeline because it connects you to that place in them that they're not letting anyone near, and they're coming to you because they want you to find your way to it. And then we've, like, as a doctor, I want to fix things, so I'm like, look, I got all of these tools and some of this knowledge, and I'm not like, you could probably find more knowledgeable people, but I'm here with you right now, and we could do this. Then you get to the most difficult spot, right? Like, across all of medicine, technology is amazing, and, like, medical advances are, like, crazy. Like, we could do anything with anyone, but if you offer someone, like, the magic pill that, like most people wouldn't take it, right? And it's not, like, it's difficult for people, but I think people fall down. So for me, I think there's 3 reasons why people, like, struggle to like make changes or address things. One of those is, like, not knowing how to do it. That's something we can help with. Another one is, like, having the resources. Like, practically in our society, some people really struggle because they don't have the money for therapy, they don't have the time for, and that's, again, something that needs support. But the last thing is, like, belief. And, like, people don't believe in themselves, and that's the most difficult thing, but it's also a really straightforward thing to address. Just believe in you, like, and you mean it with conviction, and I do. I feel like I just totally believe. Like, belief is what sets us free, or the lack of it, like, is what holds us back. And, like, I know that things work. I know that people get better, and so I can sit there and be like, I totally believe that this is going to happen. And it's like magic.
And it does.
Yeah. You know, if I can inspire a bit of confidence, I'm going to do it.
Amazing. Well, I have to say, we're finished with our 2 hours. So, with that, I believe in all of you listening right now. Come on, you got to say it too.
I believe in you too.
2025 is going to be a wonderful year. And thank you so much for coming on today. It was a pleasure.
Pleasure.
What time is it, Darwin?
It is 10-2.
Gosh, that went quick.
I know. Oh, we could have gone a little further, a little longer, but anyway, that's fine. That was good. Oh my god, my leg is like, ugh. Oh my goodness. My leg is so painful. Just in case you guys are wondering, it's really painful.
Yeah, I got my
the arthritis.
bad knees.
You know, my brother